Oriens, splendor lucis aeterni, et sonius tinsiae, veni et illumina, sedentes in tenebris, et umbra mortis. Ego sum resurrectio et vita, qui credit in me, et siam si mortuus fuerit vivet, et omnis qui vivit et credit in me, non morietur in aeternum. One man can fill a church. We have in the prophecy of this second book of Samuel the promise that from David would come a whole house. It is something akin to what is happening this morning. This church is full of what has come essentially from one man and bits thereof. We can pass through life, we can leave no trace behind us, or we can live and leave behind us a clan, a memory, a warmth that lingers on. I am privileged to know your family, for you are the best of what is around as regards the old Irish scene, the travelling people as they were, faith and deep faith, and John was a good example. Now what happens when a soul goes forth? As it happens, when I came to pray with John, before actually he'd been diagnosed, I anointed him in hospital here in Navan. And then, as I was leaving the ward, I greeted a person in the bed opposite. Obviously a man like John of faith. And you know what he said? He said two things. He had been in the bed next to Father Alphonsus of Colin Abbey nearby, while he was petering out in a whole atmosphere of calm, serene prayer, homeward bound. No drama, just resting until the Lord called. But then he added this. I've been there, I think he said 4 times. I've been in the tunnel 4 times. And he explained what he meant. Because of his condition, a very weak heart, I believe, he was always petering out. And they were getting him back, resuscitating him. And each time, his soul was actually leaving his body. The tunnel experience that everyone talks about. And he was on the way. He could see a light in this distance each time, but then they called him back. Since he's had the 5th journey, but did not come back. They went into the beyond roughly the same time. Now I know from your family that John had quite an interesting moment at that point of departure. A very beautiful moment, which I repeat for the sake of those who perhaps didn't hear about it. I've heard about it from other similar cases. It's the last moment on this side of eternity. Apparently they're way out of reach already for a good long time. We can't get through to them. And then, just as heaven is about to call, strangely, they open their eyes. And in all lucidity, at the last moment of life on this side of eternity, perhaps without a word, they recognize those who are there. and the whole big family was there. Without saying anything to anyone, he then apparently closed his eyes peacefully and rested in the arms that made him. But I am quite sure that what happened then was something similar to what happens in many cases, apparently. The other members of the family who are already waiting, a certain number of them, it would seem, are there, waiting for him to leave this envelope that is the body. And those who have made it on the other side are saying, welcome to the big family. You've made it. And we're helping him right now, of course, to make it, should there be anything yet to purify. That's our consolation in the Catholic faith. We're in touch. We're almost holding their hand at the altar. Sometimes quite dramatic things happen at that point. One case I heard about some years ago, very puzzling. It was a friend of mine who was a nurse in an old people's home. And she said to me one day, I am the last face that they see on earth. I hand them over to God. And things happened at that moment. And she came to me one morning at university and said this, last night a woman died in the home. Her mammy was the matron. But this person, her name was Lena, was completely isolated from anyone on earth. Deaf and blind. No contact with any human being, except one. She had one cousin who was always faithful to her and with whom she was able to communicate somehow and pass on warmth. Eventually, and she didn't know it, this cousin died. Suddenly, out of nowhere, she sat up and these blind eyes opened. And as her mother, the matron, said, they were seeing eyes. And what they copped onto was this. The cousin who had just died had come for her. And the only person that she knew in this world was, as it were, waiting at the other end. And she too calmly petered out, and her blind eyes opened for the first time onto the whole horizon that awaits us all. So, my friends, in that spirit of abandonment, of littleness before the mystery, we calmly return to God, the soul, the serene soul of John that he gave us for a short time, but leaving such rich memories that we praise God for a life well lived.
A lady died last night. This was written after hearing of the death of a good old lady, Lena, in North Wales, who was completely deaf and dumb and blind by the end too. She had one close friend, her cousin. She sat up suddenly after he had died, even though she had no means of knowing of his death. She made as if to talk to someone, and the nurse and her mother, the matron, said that her eyes were seeing eyes at that point. Her eyes were gazing in one direction. The only one who, though out of reach, mattered to her, must have come for her. She followed him that night. A little child of God that made no noise, and heard no sound across cemented ears. For one short hour held two dimmed eyes in poise, wide open with blind gaze. The tunneled ears that passed thee wholly by had one small light that no one else would see, for 'twas thine own. And thy hid world of feeling had its sight that ne'er was known, for ne'er could it be shown. But in this hour, dumb sister, something stirred within thy sealed soul, and something moved before thy seeing eyes. Something was heard, for e'en we heard its echo. One night proved the truth that had no voice. Thine only friend, who came no more, came once more at the end.